Meanwhile, while all of the actual arbiters of Trump's future administration continue to make their power plays, let's see what the man himself is up to.
Mexico's really in trouble, a lot of trouble. Very dangerous place. And we're going to be announcing at a future date pretty soon. We're going to change, because we do most of the work there and it's ours. We're going to be changing sort of the opposite of Biden, where he's closing everything up, essentially getting rid of 50 to 60 trillion dollars worth of assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's
I think it's really cool how all of the adults in the room basically patted Trump on the head. And they told him, like, yeah, man, you go crazy. Don't, like, talk about policy or anything. Just talk about annexing the entire world. Just stir up some, just, you know, draw attention to yourself with increasingly ridiculous, meaningless showboating, you know, attention grabs while we do all the actual business behind the scenes, you know? It hurts how cartoonish it is. Yeah, I get it. I do, you know, it's a nice ego jump for me personally to, like, you know, look at this and be reminded of how correct I was in my assertion that Donald Trump will basically have nothing to do with Donald Trump's second presidency.
It's appropriate. It's appropriate. And Mexico has to stop allowing millions of people to pour into our country. They can stop them. And we're going to put very serious tariffs on Mexico and Canada, because Canada, they come through Canada too. And the drugs that are coming through are at record numbers. Mexico's really in trouble.
You know what? Honestly, just give me the full thing. Just give me the reporter questions. I don't care. Just give me the thing. I don't care.
Very respected gentleman. And I'm thrilled to announce today that DMAC will be investing at least $20 billion.
So you'd say all the Greenland stuff is just a smokescreen? Yeah, well, yeah, of course. There's no, it's literally the oligarchs patting him on the head and saying, yeah, go for it, you know? Let people argue on social media over whether it's based or cringe that he wants to annex Greenland for some reason, you know? Like, it doesn't have anything. It's a smokescreen would imply Donald Trump is in on it, and I doubt that he is. I genuinely think that they're just like, yeah, go for it, sport.
Dollars over a very short period of time into the United States, and they may go double or even somewhat more than double that amount of money. It's a great thing, and I believe he will say that he's doing it because of the fact that he was very inspired by the election. They wouldn't do it without that election, I can tell you. A lot of people wouldn't. You saw last week where we have somebody who's going to go from $100 to $200 billion, and we have many other people, and we'll be bringing some of them out. Some of them like to do it somewhat more quietly, and some don't, and they feel so strongly about the country that they want to let people know about it. But it's an honor to have such a great investor investing in our country. The investment will support massive new data centers across the Midwest, the Sunbelt area, and also to keep America on the cutting edge of technology and artificial intelligence. He's very big into the data centers. And that's going to be a very hot item in the coming years, as you know, with...
Remember, they're trying to revoke the CHIPS Act.
AI. In particular, the first phase of the project will be in Texas, Arizona, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana, those places. And Hussein, I'd love you to come up and say a few words. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been amazing news for me and my family.
That's great, man.
Invest over $1 billion in the United States.
I want to get to the reporter questions.
What they do. It's almost like talking. It's worse than talking to a judge.
Fox News, why don't you ever timestamp your shit? No.
Over the world, the Panama Canal is a disgrace. This money that's in the bank, he's going to come and do it, and he'll do a great job, and he'll build the best centers in the country, I guarantee, because I know the way he builds. Since my election, the stock market has set records. The S&P 500 index
we're not
has
at the
broken above
questions yet.
6,000
I
points
still want to hear him talk about the Panama
ever.
Canal.
Never even close. In a single month, small business optimism soared 41 points. It's not a 41. It went up 41 points. And that's the largest in the 39-year history of the group that does it. According to Gallup, the American people's confidence in the economy has just surged to the highest level in history. That's why I have a news conference like that. I take the greatest business leaders in the world. I say, hey, do you want to say you're going to invest the money? They're not looking for news conferences. They're saying, what am I doing here? They go in and they invest money. But it's good to know where the smartest business people in the world are investing, and they're investing in the United States. So we've done this all in 2 months of not being there. You know,
where's all his energy got? Dude, he was like crazy senile the entire campaign. Remember his 30-minute dancing to music? He's been cooked for a while now. It just doesn't matter.
Haven't been there. And
remember, the reason why attention wasn't paid to it in the campaign is because legacy media was already bought out by the right. Remember all those examples of like the New York Times sane-washing him? Where he would say things that sounded objectively insane, and then they would paraphrase him into like sane, cohesive arguments, and they would write an article on something like, many are concerned about Donald Trump's bold new plan to, and the bold new plan in question was him drooling into the microphone for 3 minutes. Like, they all knew, they were all complicit.
It's pretty amazing, and we think we're going to do some really great things. Really great things. We're being respected again all over the world. The Panama Canal is a disgrace, what took place at the Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter gave it to them for $1.
That's not what I was referring to.
They were supposed to treat us well. I thought it was a terrible thing to do. You know, it was the most expensive structure ever built in the history of our country, relatively. It would be the equivalent of substantially over $1 trillion today. We lost 38,000 people. Think of it, 38.
The we in reference here were like local, basically slave workers. We looked this up. He is right, though. It was expensive building the Panama Canal. It's a shame that America never benefited from its construction. You know, like we built it, we paid for it, and by we I mean like slaves that we hired for nothing. It's a shame we've never gotten any use out of it.
1,000 people, they died from malaria, mosquitoes. They were unable to stop the mosquitoes. They paid people 5 times more to take the job. Many of those people died. We gave it away for $1. But the deal was that, you know, they have to treat us fairly. They don't treat us fairly. They charge more for our ships than they charge for ships of other countries. They charge more for our Navy than they charge for navies of other countries. They laugh at us because they think we're stupid, but we're not stupid anymore. So the
fascism really is built on like the myth of humiliation. The Nazis loved this with the JQ and the Treaty of Versailles. Like, you need to always be enraged by your mistreatment. It's a permanent victim complex. Like the idea of like mighty America is being humiliated by Panama. They're laughing at us. Starving children in the Congo, they're laughing at us. They're making a fool out of us with these trade deals. They extract their own water out of the bark of their trees rather than buying it from Nestle. They won't take deals with us. Biden has allowed this to happen. They're laughing at us over there in the Congo. They're making a fool out of us, but not anymore.
Panama Canal is under discussion with them right now. They violated every aspect of the agreement, and they've morally violated it also. And they want our help because it's leaking and not in good repair. And they want us to give $3 billion to help fix it. I said, well, why don't you get the money from China? Because China's basically taken it over. China's at both ends of the Panama Canal. China's running the Panama Canal. And they come to see this Biden, this guy who should never have been allowed even to run for president. Of course, she shouldn't have either, because that never happened. I had to be 2 people, not 1. But they want $3 billion to fix the Panama Canal that's run by China and makes a lot of money, China.
China?
One of the most profitable structures ever built, because you have ships lined up back to Florida, frankly, and they just keep going through, and the numbers are staggering, $500,000 to $1 million a ship. And they took it away from us, meaning we gave it to them for $1. But not going to happen. What they've done to us, they've charged us, they've overcharged our ships, overcharged our Navy. And then when they need repair money, they come to the United States to put it up. We get nothing. Those days are over.
I don't need to pause here to say that like literally everything he's saying here is just a flat lie, right? We understand. Like, again, I know we go over this, but like, there's no, it's because, man, there used to be some effort where like Trump would lie during his first term, and there would be like a grain of truth in the lie. Like, it'd be a complex economic situation that he was boiling down into a convenient but like half truth, and then you would look at it, and there would be Trump supporters who would only get the half truth, and you'd argue with them. I just remember having debates before about like, you remember, I think it was Actual Justice Warrior was his name. We were having a debate on like whether over policing black neighborhoods increases black crime or something like that. And I went viral for some clip of me in that debate. I don't know what he's up to these days. I can't speak for him personally. I don't know where he is or what he shifted, or so I don't want to like impugn him. But like, I feel like most of my debates in those days were kind of like that, where they had like, their conclusion was wrong, but they still tried to arrive at their conclusion through something that sounded like logic, right? So like, the position of a conservative when it came to over-policing black neighborhoods would be, well, since black people commit more crime per capita and they're poorer areas that are more disposed to crime, wouldn't it make sense to send more police there? And there is logic in that. It's wrong, but there's logic in that. And then you would have to like explain how things are more complicated. But I feel like nowadays a conservative would just say, we should send more cops to black neighborhoods because it's based and they might kill more black people. And that would be like the argument they'd give you. And then you'd say, what? Do you actually believe that? And then they'd grin at you, and they'd be typing into their Discord community about how based it was that they said that. And there'd be people spamming like Giga Chad image edits. Do they actually believe it? Probably not. Not really, but like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, like that's, so now like it feels like debunking isn't even the, I don't know.
Working with the Republican majorities in Congress will cut taxes, slash regulations, raise wages, and boost incomes at a pace the world has not seen before, and certainly not from our country. We had a big chunk of it for the first 3 years prior to COVID coming in my administration. We had the greatest economy in history. We cut the most regulations in the history of our country, and I did that all in 4 years, by 4 times more than any other president cut. We did that in 4 years.
Okay, just give me the questions.
We were just getting $1 billion, maybe more than that, probably the most expansion in my.
About what your plan is. Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter...
Oh my God, it just occurred to me. I can't believe we cycled back around to it, but we're unironically doing a Bush-Cheney presidency again, aren't we? Except instead of J.D. Vance being the vice president, it's Elon Musk being the guy. Like, with the person who blusters in public as a cover for the nefarious machinations of the people. I can't believe it. We circled back around. There's like 3 types of American president. We circled back around to the other one.
Lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages. The hostages were a big deal. But if you remember, and nobody wants to talk about the Panama Canal now because, you know, it's inappropriate, I guess, but because it's a bad part of the Carter legacy. But he was a good man. Look, he was a good man. I knew him a little bit, and he was a very fine person, but that was a big mistake. Giving the Panama Canal to Panama was a very big mistake. We lost 38,000 people. It cost us the equivalent of $1 trillion, maybe more than that. Probably the most expensive, they say it was the most expensive structure, if we call it a structure, which I guess you can.
The Panama Canal shit is wild. Well, it's not based in reality. It's a deliberately ostentatious, meaningless signifier. It is it's a red herring, you know? Like, it doesn't relate to anyone's actual life, their day-to-day experience. It's just a thing to talk about that's loud and abrasive. Yeah, it's a forced narrative. That's a good term for it. Yeah, a manufactured issue, but even more manufactured than the ones usually are. You know what I mean? It doesn't even relate to a modern culture war issue, except for, I guess, like U.S. hegemony. It doesn't even, like, yeah.
ever built. And giving that away was a horrible thing. And I believe that's why Jimmy Carter lost the election, even more so than the hostages. Those two things.
It was the hostages. Did you know that the incoming Reagan presidency like colluded to prevent those hostages from being released earlier because they didn't want it to happen under Jimmy Carter's watch because they didn't want him to benefit from it during the election? I love me some treason.
Ukraine and Iran, the two negotiations you'll be heading into. On Ukraine, you said just before it's a lot more complicated now.
Much more complicated.
Do you believe?
Because it would have never started.
Right, but it has started. You've
Well,
got,
not only started, the cities are largely knocked down.
so you've
they're
got
like,
what you've got. At this point, to hold on to leverage in dealing with President Putin, would you make a commitment to the Ukrainians that you will keep supporting them during the negotiations?
well, I wouldn't tell you if that were the
Would you
case.
make a commitment to provide a security guarantee if they do enter into an armistice or a ceasefire
Yeah.
along the lines that the French and the Germans?
So,
It's a secret,
you know,
yeah.
a big part of the problem was Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now, they've said that. That's been like written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand.
No. Oh, man. It is crazy to go like from one breath to another from like, I am so pro-American hegemony that I want to annex Greenland, Canada, and the Panama Canal. And then in the next breath, you're like, well, Russia asked us to not expand our military alliance over to Ukraine, a position, you know, like, so we can't do that, you know? We can't do that.
And their feeling about that. But there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation. And when I heard the way that Biden was negotiating, I said, you're going to end up in a war.
Why not annex Russia? Because Russia is also a hollow country run by oligarchs, and a lot of those oligarchs have ties to American oligarchs. That's it. The only reason why we are pro-Russia and not pro-China, even though both countries are run by oligarchs, is that China's oligarchs are kept under whip and chain by the CCP, and Russia's haven't been. Their oligarchs have been shifty, like global propagators of far-right politics for decades, whereas the Chinese billionaires are mostly engaged in Chinese business, and the CCP tries to wrangle them into national, like to the national agenda. That's literally it. If it wasn't for that, we would be doing the same thing with China, and we would just be fear-mongering about North Korea and Iran. Like the only reason China is our enemy is because they haven't played ball with global capital the same way that Russia has.
And it turned out to be a very bad war. And it could escalate. That war could escalate to be much worse than it is right now.
They can never join NATO.
Well, my view is that it was always understood. In fact, I believe that they had a deal, and then Biden broke it. They had a deal which would have been a satisfactory deal to Ukraine and everybody else, but that Biden said, no, you have to be able to join NATO. And that's always been, and nobody knows more about NATO than I. You know, years ago when I first started this, I didn't know too much about NATO, but I got it right anyway. I said they're taking advantage. I'm the one that got, and the Secretary General was here, as you know, 2 weeks ago, saying that if it weren't for me, NATO wouldn't even exist right now, because I raised from countries that weren't paying their bills. At that time, 28 countries, 20 of them were not paying their bills, 21 to be exact. They weren't paying.
He's so back. He's like a source of comfort for me. He's my comfort character because at least he's funny and personable, unlike the people who actually run the country, who are basically like not human beings, you know? Zuckerberg and Musk are just like empty vessels of capital, you know, that blow with the wind to their interest. At least Trump has some like idiosyncrasies. Well, Musk does too, but most of Musk's idiosyncrasies are being like incredibly cringe. So it's not as endearing.
Or they were paying a very small portion. And I raised over $680 billion. That was the number he gave, by saying, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. And as soon as I said that, the money came pouring in. But Obama could have said it. Other people could have said it. Bush could have said it. Nobody said it but me. I took a lot of heat. They said, oh, that's a threatening statement. Well, they weren't paying their bills. I said, we're not going to protect you if you're not paying the bills. So in a true sense, I saved NATO, but NATO's taken advantage of us. And one of the problems that I have, and I've said it openly, I said it to President Zelensky, Europe is in for a tiny fraction of the money that we're in. Now, whether you like that situation or not, Europe is much more affected than the United States.
Why is he talking like a character from the 1920s? He is literally a New Yorker who was born in the 40s. I mean, the man's pretty old.
The thing called the ocean in between us, right? Why are we in for billions and billions?
Like he was like a fully grown adult when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. Not just a fully grown adult. He was like into his adulthood. I mean, he's a lot of legacy here.
Of dollars more money than Europe. And you know, they're a similar size, a little smaller, but they're a similar size economy as the United States when you add them up. And yet Europe is in for a small fraction of the number the United States is in. Now, Biden could have called them up during the term. That's what I did. I said, you have to pay your bills. And they all, one stood up. I won't say who. You'll probably have it because the papers, the media hated to report on it. But a prime minister stood up from a country, you know, a famous meeting of 28 nations with no press, no anybody in the room. He stood up. He says, does that mean if we don't pay our bill, and at that point it was 2%, it should be 5%. It should be 5%, not 2%. But at that point it was 2%, but many people didn't pay. Some people didn't pay anything. But many people were way, including Germany. Germany was at less than 1%.
You're going to press for 5%?
Well, I think NATO should have 5%, yeah. Well, you can't do it at 2%. I mean, at 2%, every country, if you're going to have a country in a regular military, you're at 4%. I think they should be, you know, they're in dangerous territory. I think it should be, they can all afford it, but they should be at 5%, not 2%. I'm the one that got them to pay 2%. But a gentleman stood up, a prime minister stood up, and he said to me, sir, could I ask you a question? You're saying we have to pay our bills. If we don't pay our bills, will the United States protect us from Russia? I said, if you don't pay, you mean you're delinquent? He said, yes. He said, if you're delinquent, we will not protect you. I took a lot of heat. Although it was somewhat closed door, I took a lot of heat from the media. And you know what happened? The money started pouring.
The story is complete fiction. Yeah.
In. That's why it.
Also, the idea of like, yeah, we're in a shared military alliance bound by an iron oath of shared defense. But if you're late on your dues, we won't protect you. What?
NATO has money. And the secretary.
He does treat it like a mafia racket.
It was the most incredible thing he had ever seen in a negotiation. Now, if I would have said, yes, we will, nobody would have paid. If I would have loved to say, yes, we'll protect you even if you don't pay. But that's not the way life works.
Bills, what bills? There are no bills for NATO spending. It's asked every member of NATO spend a percentage of their national GDP on defense spending. It's 3%, right? Is it 2 or 3? I always 2 and 3. They're such close numbers. You know, they're very similar numbers. You can even make a 3 by adding a swoop to the bottom of a 2. It's 2? All right. And there were some countries in Europe that weren't meeting that 2% threshold. The stupid thing is that it's meaningless because, like, whether or not Estonia is using 2% of its GDP on defense spending is meaningless to the overall, like, military capabilities of NATO. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely no relation. It's like, oh, yeah, here's the United States with our orbital, you know, ion cannon. And whether or not Estonia has like 1,000 troops fully outfitted or 1,100, it's stupid. Yeah, the 2%, Trump treats it like a membership fee, when in reality it's meant to be more of a like, this is a guideline, this is a target for collective expectation. They're not dues, they're not paid to us. Like, it has nothing to do with our wealth.
2 questions related to each other. First, you said on your first day of office, you're going to pardon January 6th defendants. Are you planning to pardon those who were charged with violent offenses?
Well, we're looking at it, and we have other people in there. And as you see, I guess 24 or 28 people came now from the FBI. That came out very quietly. Nobody reported it, but they had people in some form related to the FBI. They had 4 or 5 people that were strongly related to the FBI. We have to find out about that. We have to find out about Hezbollah. We have to find out about who exactly was in that whole thing, because people that...
Dude, okay, wait. potential future timeline, okay? The Trump administration, which actually doesn't give a shit about the J6 ralliers and thinks they're probably like morons, like Trump probably thinks of them the same way he thinks of US veterans, that is, losers and suckers. He pardons half of them. The other half with violent offenses, he doesn't pardon. He calls them like Hezbollah or FBI informants. They're left to rot. It leads to a bunch of MAGA ads actually being really angry. I'm waiting for it, okay? I'm ready for it. Fell for it again award. Yerp.
That did some bad things were not prosecuted. You know, I see it all the time, and you see it too. People that were doing some bad things weren't prosecuted, and people that didn't even walk into the building are in jail right now. So we'll be looking at the whole thing, but I'll be making major pardons. Yes, please.
Sorry, just one more point.
Please.
On Jack Smith's report.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. It's good to see you again. 2 questions about Syria and the ongoing war in Gaza. About Syria, the Pentagon disclosed last month the U.S. has some 2,000
You're wrong on the military spending isn't paid to the U.S. angle. Elaborate.
troops in Syria. That's almost double the number initially we were told of 900. Will you keep that troop capacity the same upon taking?
Well, I won't tell you that because that's part of a military strategy, but I will say it was Turkey. Turkey's been after that country in different names and different forms and shapes for 2,000 years. Those people that went in are from Turkey. And President Erdogan is a friend of mine. He's a guy I like, respect. I think he respects me also. He's the one that didn't go after certain people after I requested that he not. You know who I'm talking about? The Kurds. I don't know how long that's going to, because they're natural enemies. They hate each other. But he didn't do that yet. And he didn't do it in the past also. He started, and I said, please don't do that, and he didn't do it. So
God,
but if you
help
look
me.
at what happened with Syria, Russia was weakened, Iran was weakened, and he's a very smart guy. And he sent his people in there through different forms and different names, and they went in and they took over, and that's the way it is.
I'm sorry, I don't mean that.
It's true. He's Rojava's greatest defender. Yeah, it's the greatest ally to the Kurdish independent autonomous anarchist project known as Rojava that has ever lived. You know, they're going to be building statues of him the same way they've got statues of. Oh, they're effing. That's all right. I'll wait. They're going to be building statues of Donald Trump in Rojava the same way they've got a statue of Bill Clinton in Armenia, you know? No, and sorry, Kosovo, not Armenia. I was thinking Albania, and then I said Armenia, but it was Kosovo. I'm not racist.
Do you have concerns about HTS taking control of
By the way, I
Syria at this
have
point?
the envoy here. Is that in the back? It is. Standing with my son, Eric, is Steve Witkoff, who's just got back from the Middle East, and he's done a fantastic job. He's a great deal maker. I said, what we need there is a deal maker, because nobody makes a deal. We have people that understand where the rivers are and where the meets and bounds are, but they can't talk. They can't make deals. Steve's done a great job. I just want to thank you, Steve. You've been working endlessly for months, and he's working specifically on the hostages, trying to get them back.
Well, that was my second question is Hamas.
Steve, come up for a second. Maybe you might want to say a couple of words.
Sir,
I didn't.
For looking suit ever. I blame the myth a lot of young people have, the idea that wearing a suit is stuffy and uncomfortable, on the tailoring that like modern day boomers have with their shitty, ill-fitting suit jackets and their narrow trousers. You know who always looks comfortable in a suit? Donald Trump. Look at that. Seriously, like, just look at the suit. I know it's him, but look at the suit. He tends to get his stuff pretty well tailored, you know, gigantic shoulder pads and light materials aside. Good suits feel like pajamas. A good, well-fitting suit, it's some of the most comfortable shit you're ever going to wear. It's literally tailored to your body.
It is a very rare, like a great surgeon, but we have the right person. But I tell this, I don't want to hurt the negotiation. If the deal isn't done before I take office, which is now going to be 2 weeks, all hell will break out.
I feel like you've shitted on Trump's fit many times before. He has many different suits. This one fits pretty well. He's sometimes wears like older suits where the shoulder pads are collapsing and there's a bunch of wrinkles, but this one's doing all right.
In the Middle East. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. President.
You've done a great job.
Thank you.
More than 140 police officers were injured by rioters on January 6th. Will you pardon anyone who attacked a police officer?
Well, you know, the only one that was killed was a beautiful young lady named Ashley Babbitt.
Incredible.
She was killed, and there was actually somebody else that was killed also a MAGA person, but people don't give it 100% credibility. I'm going to find out about it, and we're going to find out. But Ashley Babbitt was killed. She was shot. Should have never been shot. She was shot for no reason whatsoever.
None.
In
She
fact,
did nothing.
They say that she was trying to hold back the crowd, and the crowd was made up of a lot of different people, so we'll see. But I will tell you this, the person that was killed was Ashley Babbitt. The other thing is, when they talk, you know, there was never charges of insurrection or anything like that. But if there were, this would be the only insurrection in history where people went in as insurrectionists with not one gun, okay? And let me tell you, the people that you're talking about have a lot of guns in their home for hunting and for shooting and for entertainment, a lot of good reasons.
Remember when Donald Trump specifically asked to not have security scanners to the event on January 6th because he wanted people to bring their guns? It's, again, like, we're entering an era now where if you say true things about the president, the full weight of the federal government will come down on you with a defamation lawsuit. He can lie about literally anything he wants and it doesn't matter.
But there wasn't one gun that they found. And why didn't they find the bomber, the pipe bomber? You know, they know who the pipe bomber is. The FBI knows who it is. The status of the FBI has gone down so far, and the status of the DOJ, or as I call it, the Department of Justice, it's the Department of Injustice, being laughed at all over the world. And hopefully with Pam Bondi and with Kash Patel and with other people that we're putting in, that will all come back. If you do a poll in the FBI, I guarantee I'm at like 90% with the agents of the FBI, but they have hurt.
That might be true.
Hurt that incredible place. Law enforcement, I mean, you think of the FBI, they raided this house. By the way, they could have told me, could I see this? I would have given them, I actually told them, come in anytime you want. You can see anything. They raided the house and the case was dismissed. And now I'm in litigation. I'm suing them for doing that. And I feel so badly doing it. I'm the president of the United States and I'm suing the United States, but I'm suing them for other things too. The FBI has gone so, its reputation has been so horribly hurt between Comey, who is the worst, and all of the others. What's happened to the FBI is, and we're going to make it great again. We're going to make the FBI great again. We're going to make the Department of Justice fair and strong, but fair again, because all they did was attack me because I'm their political opponent, and that includes with local judges like Marshawn. You ought to find out. Ask them, why do I have a gag order where I'm not allowed to speak? Think of it. I'm the president of the United States, and I'm not allowed to speak. Why? Because if I did speak, people would understand the scam. It's a scam. And we have very dishonest judges, and New York judges are very bad. We had one that valued this house at $18 million because it was good for their...
Because you're not a dictator? Well, he fixed that, didn't he? We should basically operate moving forward under the assumption that the United States is lawless with regards to the executive branch. Like, we should operate on the assumption that there's no rule of law. You know, we're like a pre-Magna Carta kind of dealio, basically.
Case. He actually valued that chandelier is worth more than $18 million. He valued this house as $18 million. And we have another one who was so nasty, so horrible, such a brute, most vicious, vile person. These are New York judges. But we've won most of the cases, so we're very happy about that. Please.
Back on Greenland, your position is clear, but have you directed your staff to take these specific actions to draw plans? And can you elaborate again? You didn't rule out military coercion.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting
I'm
it.
sorry. So right after this whole Mar-a-Lago press conference went down, Aaron Rupar, who I despise, tweeted, "Well, that was crazy. Congrats, America." And it just reminds me of how inept and worthless liberal opposition is, where they think that like meaningfully opposing something like this is like exasperatedly saying, "Well, isn't that stupid?" That worked so well during the Bush administration. You'd think 8 years of that and then 4 years of Trump would have been enough to teach them this, but like it's really the best they have to offer, you know? Mind you, Aaron Rupar never said this after any of the Department of State press conferences where they lied nonstop in very overt, egregious, and like malicious ways about what Israel was doing in Gaza. So it's not even a matter of dishonesty. It's just a matter of like, you know, Trump is like rude and he says silly things, you know? Well, that just happened. The fascist autocracy is right behind me, isn't it?
Happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
Have you asked your staff to draw plans for acquisition? I mean, are you active?
No, we're not at that stage, but we have people. I haven't even entered office yet.
Secondly, sir, Elon Musk has drawn some criticism and a lot of attention for some of his actions and provocative statements about foreign affairs, including in Europe. Your reaction to that, is that appropriate for...
You mean where he likes people that tended to be conservative? I don't know the people. I can say Elon's doing a good job, very smart guy. I don't know the people you're talking about. He was, I know he said some negative things about a couple of people that are running for office, but that's not so unusual. Yes, please.
I wanted to ask you about Ukraine and Putin. How soon do you anticipate going to meet with Putin to discuss the Ukraine situation?
Well, I can't tell you.
Trump already basically admitted to meeting with Putin multiple times prior to him being elected, didn't he? There was was it in the debate with Kamala that he admitted that, or was that in the interview that he did? I forget what specific conversation he had where he admitted that, but he was pretty straightforward about it.
That, but I know that Putin would like to meet. I don't think it's appropriate that I meet until after the 20th, which I hate, because you know every day people are being, many young people are being killed, soldiers. You know the land is very flat, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers from each, many hundreds of thousands from each side are dead, and they're laying in fields all over the place. Nobody to even collect. There's landmines all over. It's a disaster. But it's very flat. It's great. It's farmland, and it's very, very flat. And the only thing that stops a bullet is the human body. And the human body is stopping a lot of bullets.
They just continue indefinitely until then.
Within the first 3 to 6 months.
I hope to have 6 months.
First 3 to 6 months.
No, I hope long before 6 months. Look, Russia's losing a lot of young people, and so is Ukraine. And it should have never been started. That's a war that should have never happened. I guarantee you, if I were president, that war would have never happened.
Who would you like to nominate to replace Michael Barr as vice chair of the military?
I'll be announcing somebody.
Mr. President, if we were to work under the assumption that you're serious about making Canada 51st state of the United States, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said, under no circumstances will it ever be the 51st state.
Maybe he won't win, but maybe he will. I don't care.
You had suggested.
Listen, I don't care what he says.
But Sir Lopez, you're considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No, economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem with Canada. So many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. You know, they make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put, you know, restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't.
This is what we get, an insane amount of lumber from Canada, by the way. We get a lot of stuff in general from Canada. It is remarkable how, like, this is how you run the grift of pretending to be a, like, protectionist, nationalist, close your borders, isolationist type, while also being utterly dependent on global capital, which is you're simultaneously like, yeah, we don't need Canada. We don't need to trade with them. It's bad when we trade with them somehow, but also we should annex them because we want their stuff.
We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada? And I said that to, as I called him, Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, what would happen if we didn't subsidize you, if we didn't, because we give them a lot of money. We help them. As an example, we're buying icebreakers, and Canada wants to join us in the buying of icebreakers. I said, we don't really want to have a partner in the buying of icebreakers. We don't need a partner. But
Gives the U.S. the right to lay claim to a
no right. Nope, no right. Here's what we have. We have a right not to help them with their financial difficulties because we owe $36 trillion too. We're going to start knocking it out pretty fast, but we're going to be able to do it because of energy and other things. But no right. No right. But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function if we didn't take their 20% of our car market.
Didn't Trump create a historic increase in the deficit thanks to his tax cut? Yeah, but it's not like it matters. Like, it doesn't matter. The reality doesn't matter. The only actual economic pressures we're going to be subjected to are, like, the only social forces that will develop are the ones that are allowed to develop in the service of capital, and the only material forces that will develop are the ones that further the capital acquisition of, the bourgeoisie. That's it. Like, will things go more anti-woke? Sure, to the extent that it's profitable. Will, what economic measures will develop? Well, the ones that make more money for a small number of people. That's it. Everything else is a distraction.
They send us hundreds of thousands of cars. They make a lot of money with that. They send us a lot of other things that we don't need. We don't need their cars, and we don't need the other products. We don't need their milk. We get a lot of milk. We get a lot of everything. And we don't need any of it. So I said to him, well, why are we doing it? He said, I don't really know. He was unable to answer the question, but I can answer it. We're doing it because of habit, and we're doing it because we like our neighbors, and we've been good neighbors. But we can't do it forever, and it's a tremendous amount of money. And why should we have a $200 billion deficit and add on to that many, many other things that we give them in terms of subsidy? And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it. We're not going to have it with European Union either. European Union, we have a trade deficit of $350 billion. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm product. They don't take anything. And so we're not going to have it with them either. Brian, go ahead.
Yes. Happy New Year, by the way.
Thank you.
We have some breaking news. You may not be aware of this, but it looks like Canon has blocked the DOJ from releasing the Smith's report until further court proceedings. Get your thoughts on that.
Wow, that's a big story.
Yeah.
So if I get it right, the fake witch hunt started by the DOJ having to do with books and records, and Biden had many more, and he wasn't protected by the Presidential Records Act. I was. But all of that fake stuff that took the lives of people, I mean, literally destroyed people. People are destroyed because of what they did. Destroyed. But we got to be president. But
Canada destroyed Trump in the last trade war. He's going to get spanked again. I don't even know if there's going to be a trade war. I genuinely think that they're just giving Trump the go-ahead on saying literally anything that he wants at these press conferences, because the only actual changes that are going to happen, the only meaningful ones, are just going to be like austerity politics, a rolling back of worker protections. You're probably going to see people working younger and younger, the wealth gap increasing more and more, like that kind of stuff, I genuinely feel like all of this is a manufactured issue.
Biden
I take a
did
piss
it
real
for
quick.
40 years. He did it when he was a senator. That was illegal. And they ruled it was illegal. How about that? they said, it's illegal, but he's unfit to stand trial. So he can stand and be president of the United States, but the prosecutor found that he's unfit for trial. I was going to use that as a major talking point, but I never got to use it because all of a sudden I had a new candidate who was also sort of unfit to stand trial, right? But so what you're saying is that the judge just blocked the, so Cannon was thrown off the case. They dropped their appeal because he had no case. They dropped all of that, the lawsuits against us. They lost the lawsuit. So this is deranged Jack Smith. So he dropped the lawsuits. He was told to by the DOJ because they had no lawsuit. They lost in court in front of a very strong and a very brilliant judge. They lost in court, and that pertained to other cases in other courts. So he wanted to do a report just before I take office, probably. So he'll do like a 500-page report, and it'll be a fake report, just like the investigation was a fake investigation. And I said, well, wait a minute. This guy was thrown off in disgrace. In disgrace. He's going back to The Hague or wherever they're going to send him.
So great that because of Dickless Garland, Trump gets to claim victory. Yeah, it's part of it is like the liberal obsession with believing norms and institutions will persevere indefinitely. Part of it is that going after Trump, really going after Trump, would have meant going after like Capitol. And I don't just mean that in like a, you know, everyone lines up behind Trump kind of sense. I mean that in a, there's no way to go after Trump in a way that doesn't set standards that would have made the rest of the ruling class anxious.
In disgrace because he failed so badly, because it was a fake case against a political opponent. They thought they were going to use this to beat me. So what you're saying is I'm just hearing that they're not allowed to issue the report. So if they're not allowed to issue the report, that's the way it should be, because he was thrown off the case in disgrace. Why should he be allowed to write a fake report? It'll only be a fake report. That's great news. Yeah. Good.
And if I can just follow up real quickly, you want to comment, many Americans are angry that we're sending millions of dollars every month to the Taliban. Mm-hmm. Do you anticipate?
It's not even believable. Billions of dollars, not millions, billions. We pay billions of dollars to essentially the Taliban, Afghanistan. And that's given by Biden. That's the same man that took away $50 to $60 trillion worth of value from the United States. Think of it, probably our most valuable asset. Took away our most valuable asset. This can't be allowed to happen. We are now a nation of common sense. When he does that, 625 million acres, this can't be allowed to happen. Thank you for the information.
Yes, sir.
Most other people probably knew about it, but they wouldn't have told me, right?
Mr. President, on the campaign trail, you vowed to bring down the prices at grocery stores very fast.
Yeah, we won't do it
But then
fast.
you recently told Time Magazine that bringing down prices would be very hard. So what can the American people expect when you get into office?
It's always hard to bring down prices when somebody else has screwed something up like they did, but we'll bring them down. We'll get them down. Energy is going to bring down prices. We're going to have a lot of energy, and energy is what brought it up. Energy and their bad spending is what brought it up, and energy is going to bring it down. We're going to have prices down. I think you're going to see some pretty drastic price reductions. As an example, food, bacon, ham, apples, everything has gone through the roof. It's one of the reasons I want...
Asking an American to list food. Food, bacon, ham. What about eggs?
So as you know, I said it, inflation was one of the reasons I won, but I think the biggest reason I won was the fact that they are allowing prisoners to come into our country. They released their prisoners, their murderers. Thousands of murderers are now walking around the streets of our cities and farmland all over. Murders, people that have killed. Many, 32% have killed more than one person. They released them from their jails, their prisons, and their mental institutions and insane asylums.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. Unfortunately, this is the one issue where the right is at least partially correct in identifying the problem, in that there is in every major U.S. city a group of a few thousand very mentally unwell people who have been arrested like 70 times each. We don't have any systems to help them, or at least those systems aren't properly funded. So they will like assault someone, go to jail, get kicked out, assault someone, go to jail, get kicked out. And it's usually not even that many people. And the problem is that the liberal mayors, the liberal governance of these cities will then spend $50 trillion on more cops so people can show up and tell you that they can't do anything after you get assaulted by one of these people, rather than spending a tenth of that on services to actually help them and keep them off the street, you know? Like, it would cost significantly less to just build a facility where they could be indefinitely housed on a drug treatment program than it would to pay all the cops that they, you know, employ playing Subway Surfers in the, you know, MTA or whatever.
Into our country. I believe that's the reason we got such a large vote. Right, maybe one or two.
Yeah, in Seattle, it was like 3 teenagers doing like 80 robberies. Yeah, it's literally, it's just like a small, usually it's a small number of very, like, again, I brought this up with Jordan Neely, and again, I'm not justifying his murder. Sorry, legally, it's not a murder. But like, Jordan Neely should not have been a free man, you know? Man, like, decked a grandma for some reason. He should have been, you know, he should have been in jail, or he should have been in a you know, some facility. He needed help, or at least he needed to be in a box.
2 more questions? Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead, you go.
Sir, can you, President Carter is laying in state today in Washington. You had some harsh words for him about the Panama Canal. Is there any disconnect there? Do you feel a little bit bad about doing that on this day?
No, I liked him as a man. I disagreed with his policy. So, hey, he thought giving away the Panama Canal was a good thing. I think it cost him the election. That and the hostages. I actually think that was a bigger factor, because that's a deal that just should not have been made. But again, this was a question that was asked of me. I didn't bring it up. I didn't want to bring up the Panama Canal because of Jimmy Carter's death. But people don't bring it up. But, you know, you and other people have asked me about it. No, it's a deal that I was very strongly against. I was a young guy when this took place. But just
not really, no.
Why would we spend all of that money, lose 38,000 people to malaria, the mosquito? They were dying. It was horrible what was happening. They paid them 4 times more than they would make in the United States, but they knew they were going to go over there and die. And they died in the jungles of malaria. There was nothing we could do to stop it. 38 times. And then we gave it away for $1.
Congress, you appeared to open the door in your radio interview yesterday for 2 bill approaches. It's still your preference for one big, beautiful bill, as you have said.
Well, I like one big, beautiful bill, and I always have, I always will. But if 2 is more certain, it does go a little bit quicker because you can do the immigration stuff early. Now, you have to understand, for immigration and for the wall, we won the case on the wall. You know, they tried to sell the wall for 5 cents on the dollar, by the way. And we had, fortunately, a judge that stopped that. But they were already discarding the wall. And 5 cents on the dollar. And you know what they were doing? They were calling us up and saying, we'll sell it back to you at 200 cents. In other words, double what we paid for it. So they were going to buy it from this guy for 5 cents on the dollar. They were making deals.
I can't believe the Dems see to ground the stupid wall. I can't believe that the wall is now one of the more sensible Donald Trump policy positions. That's how far things have regressed. Now it's, oh, the wall, he wants to build a big wall on the southern border. As long as he just does that, that's like a huge win. Like, oh, please, yeah. Like, oh, it's that, just that? You just went, okay, fine, sure, take the wall.
Unfortunately, we had a very smart judge that stopped it cold.
You're going to spend a bunch of money accomplishing nothing? Please, sure, okay, whatever, dude.
Called for an investigation, too, and he should. But think of it. They were selling the wall that was exactly the wall that the Border Patrol wanted. That was designed by them. Steel, concrete, rebar, exactly as they want. Very, very heavy steel, very powerful steel, hard to cut. Very, very heavy, 7,000-pound concrete, which is a very strong concrete. Everything was top of the line. Very expensive. Would be double what we paid for it then. 6 years ago. But let me just tell you, they were selling it for 5 cents on the dollar to people, and those people were calling us, asking us to pay them 200 cents because it's a good deal because we can have it immediately. And you know what immediately is? Just leave it in place. No, the papers haven't written that, though. That deal is like all the other things that these people do. These people either hate our country or they're very stupid. And I don't believe they're stupid because nobody can cheat on elections like they cheat and be stupid. They either hate our country or they're stupid. So remember what I said, because nobody wants to report it. They were selling the wall for 5 cents on the dollar. and trying to resell it back to us for 200 cents or less.
Oh, I've made this point before as well, but I feel like I'm going to need to keep making it. I think that the performative anti-patriotism is the most dead end that has ever dead ended. Like, if you care about swaying people politically, the whole like I hate America such and such, you're basically forfeiting any avenue for convincing anyone. I know it's not about whether or not, you know, we did colonialism or the Native Americans or we're not talking about any of that. It's like, I've always felt like performative anti-patriotism has kind of been like the refuge of edgy do-nothings. If you want to convince anyone right now, and God help me, we have to be working on that. Like, you have to be doing well, actually, I love this country, and that's why I don't want it getting raped to death by oligarchs, you know? Elon hates this country, Trump hates this country, so on and so forth. You know, I'm just saying, like, you're gonna get, like, if someone says that, and then you've got some turned up nose, you know, lefty dipshit going like, you love this country and don't want it raped to death by oligarchs. Well, after what we did to the Native Americans, maybe it deserves to be raped to death by oligarchs, actually. Like, that person doesn't care about anything except looking cool. They don't care about making anything better for anyone. They're just looking for e-cred. Like, it's not like, just we have to excise this. It has nothing to do with actual patriotism. It is just.
But for 200 cents on the dollar, that's a nice return.
They announced that it will stop putting fact checks on posts on its website. And Meta said today it would stop putting fact checks on its website and instead allow community to
Well, I watched their news conference, and I thought it was a very good news conference. I think they've come a long way. Meta, Facebook, I think they've come a long way. I watched it. The man was very impressive. I watched it. Actually, I watched it on Fox. I'm not allowed to say that. Say it?
Do you think he's directly responding to the threats that you have made to him in the past?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
You know, you gotta love him. Jesus, man. You gotta love him. At least he's honest.
The last time you were here, you were asked a question about the U.S. possibly launching a preemptive strike on Iran. You said you wouldn't answer that question.
On who?
Obviously, on Iran. The U.S. launching a preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities.
And I said, I don't talk about it. It's a military strategy.
But it is a legitimate question.
Well, it's not really, because only a stupid person would answer it. Look, it's a military strategy, and I'm not answering your questions on military strategy. All right, one more. Brian, go ahead. Brian?
Could you give us a preview of what you might be talking to leaders of Congress who are expected to come here in the next couple of days? And you've got a very supportive Congress behind you.
Yeah, they're great. So we have a wonderful Republican Congress. We have a leader that I have a lot of confidence in. I think he's going to be, hopefully, a great leader, a great speaker. And we have a leader, by the way, in the Senate I think has been great. John Thune has been doing a fantastic job. But it goes through the House first.
I think you're putting too much faith in forces behind Trump, as in he can say what he wants, but only rational money-making stuff will happen. Far-right populism inherently relies on Russia. No. What I'm saying is social outcomes can still develop insofar as they, like, facilitate the earning of capital. And if that means, like, kowtowing to the right, or like what happened in Russia, right? Like far-right nationalism, populism, LGBT, whatever the misogyny, all of these things have been allowed to propagate because they, are distractions from what's really happening to Russia. Nobody in Russia has had their life made worse because of gay people, unless one of the oligarchs is gay, which probably a lot of them are, Their country has been like raped to death, basically. It's like, Russia, biggest country in the world. They have like 3 cities. Most of Russia is like a nothing land. It's literally like a third world country. Like, they were a superpower. And over the course of a decade, basically, they went from a superpower with a lot of inequality internally to, with the exception of, again, a couple of like urban megacenters, nothing, a dismal wasteland. Basically not even subject to the Kremlin, Like a lot of Russia, it's like a level of federalism. They're just out there, like nothing, So yeah, to that extent, their lives have been made worse by the oligarchy, but obviously the oligarchs don't want them believing that, so they focus on gay people or whatever but that's the point that I'm making, like that's the driving motive. That's the force. I will say, however, one thing that really does benefit America in this respect is the fact that Trump is so antagonistic outwardly to the rest of the world, and he is also we are so like dependent on global trade routes on internationalism through capital that we can't make as much of a fuss as Germany did. Like Germany's productive forces were largely internal because the 1930s, that was before the era of like mass economic globalization. Nowadays, not so much. I mean, Russia has had a pretty like internally tight-knit economy, and even they have struggled immensely under the sanctions. It's difficult to stir up as much fuss without ruining the economy, which is of course not what they want.
And the question is whether or not we do the two bills or one bill. And, you know, look, I can live either way. I like the idea of the one big bill, but I can live either way. But they'll be coming down. The senators also will be coming down. And then ultimately we'll be meeting in the White House in a few weeks. But right now, this is the winter season. You know, they sort of call this the winter White House. It was built, I don't know if you know this, Marjorie Meriwether Post and E.F. Hutton built this. It was the greatest of all the estates in our country.
No worries, Dr. Lee.
And I saved it.
You
and
can't help being a Jerseyite. The more than I can help being a
Most of these big great houses have
Californian.
been knocked down in Palm Beach. Just about all of them, actually. And they, you know, you'd build 10 mansions on one site. But we saved it. But this was built as the Southern White House. And she gave it to the government. And, by the way, Jimmy Carter gave it back. He said it's too expensive for the United States. So I didn't realize that.
Real quick, I was just told.
Actually, Jimmy Carter, Nixon was through Watergate. He came down. Nixon came here once, and he thought it was incredible. But he had a thing called Watergate, if anybody remembers that. And so he had other things on his mind, to put it mildly. And Jimmy Carter felt that it was too extravagant for the country. So fortunately for me, he gave it back to the foundation, and I bought it from the foundation.
On reconciliation, some Republicans say in trade for a massive bill that you and they share the interest in, they want to see big spending cuts. Do you agree with that? And
Well, I'm okay with spending cuts. I like spending cuts. Just I'm on the record for spending cuts. And the debt ceiling was given to us. It shouldn't have been, but it was put in our lap. And what I want in terms of debt ceiling isn't the ceiling. I just don't want to see a default. That's all I want. I never talked about spending more money necessarily than all I want to see is no default, because nobody knows what would happen if there was a default. It could be 1929 and it could be nothing. But that was put into our lap.
Could be nothing.
And it shouldn't have been, but it was. And so we'll have...
Guys, genius idea, okay? Donald Trump actually does get the national debt down to zero. He just defaults, you know? Promises made, promises kept is what I'm saying.
But debt ceiling is not about raising a lot of money. It's really just about extending it. I just want to see an extension.
Mr. President, sir, on immigration, how much can you do by executive order, are you planning to do on executive order when it comes to immigration? And how much do you want Congress to tackle this issue? And also on day one,
Well, I had the safest border in the history of our country by far. You remember the famous chart that I brought down. I love that chart very much for a lot of reasons. But I have the safest border by far in the history of our country. And when I took it over, it was a mess. Nothing like it is now. This is 10 times worse. I got elected because of the border the first time, and I think I got elected largely because of the border the third time. And the second time I did equally well. Well, not as well as the last time, but I did very well. And I will say, this was too big to rig. You know the expression? Too big to rig. They couldn't do it. They tried, but they couldn't do it. I didn't get very much from Congress at all. I just said that we're being invaded, and I took the money out of the military. Much of the wall, I built over 500 miles of wall. Much of that wall was built through money that I put into the military. We took it out because we couldn't get...
I'm too sleep deprived for this, man. We're 13 days from inauguration. Wake up! You're going to be hearing this man like every day.
Things from Congress in those days, and we took it out. And that wall was built largely with money coming from the military. So, very simple. I went to the military, I said, our country is being invaded by very similar, nothing like what's invading our country now. They weren't releasing prisons into our country, and they weren't releasing mental institutions in, but some bad dudes were coming in, right? And I said, our country is being invaded. And I took that money largely from the military. I was sued 9 times by the Democrats in Congress, and I won all those suits. And we ended up building 571 miles of wall. Once that wall was built, they start going around it. So we're going to add another 200. That would have been up in 3 weeks. And then we had a very unfortunate election result. And they said, we don't want to put it up. We'll sell it.
Newsom's preparing the Great Western States. The only way Newsom is going to be able to resist Trump's presidency is by outflanking him from the right and building a great homeless person wood chipper before the federal government does. That's his plan, okay? Why send the feds to interfere in Californian business when we're handling our homeless people better than you are, he says, like kicking another guy he pulled off a Skid Row into the device.
And they started selling it for 5 cents on the dollar. What a second. So we'll do this again. I just want to thank everybody very much. I'm just telling you, this will be the golden age of America. This is the golden age of America. We're going to have a great country again. We're a country right now under siege. We have so many different problems, and nobody respects us overseas, but now they do. The Italian prime minister, as you know, came here the other night, just flew in and flew out. She wanted to see me. And great respect is being shown when I went to the cathedral in France. Great respect was shown by the prime minister, the president, by everybody. France was, and by the way, I have to say they did a great job in the cathedral. But great respect is being shown to our country again. And we have a great country, but we have to run it properly. It's going to be run properly. We want to get back those hostages for Israel and for us. You know, we do have people that are hostages being held. And I'll just say it again. If this deal's not done with the people representing our nation, by the time I get to office, all hell is going to break out. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Ukraine-Russia war before you take office. Can you clarify what you mean by military force in the Panama Canal?
I think it's very reflective, I guess, of the problems that we have with journalism in this country right now, that more people are going to focus on Donald Trump saying that he would use military force with regard to retaking the Panama Canal in Greenland, than people will be covering that more than they cover Zuckerberg saying, hey, Dana White's on the board of directors. Hey, I'm going to remove fact checkers. Hey, we're moving to Texas so that our like trust and safety team isn't woke. Hey, we're going to like do politics. Like this is the smokescreen for the real coup. Yeah, Trump is a complete distraction. The media knows it too. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you know, it's just what they want to talk about.